How do you know which power station is going to meet your needs in a power outage?
And we've got several you can choose from, so take a look and see what's best.
Hey Provident Preppers, I'm Jonathan.
And I'm Mike. I'm his son. I'm the Provident Prepper Jr. and we're here to tell you about Jackery power stations today. 2 years ago, I bought this little 167 watt hour Jackery power station. And I bought it so I could charge my laptop or my phone or whatever I needed to in a pinch, or even camping. And then I started to get interested in this unit right here because it has a much higher capacity.
And coincidentally, at the same time he was wanting to get this, Jackery had contacted me to see if I'd be willing to do a review on their Jackery 1500 Explorer. So this is just going to be a great opportunity to explore the whole range of possibilities and to help you understand what you can run and what you can't run. This hopefully will be very educational.
And you'll be able to see what fits your needs the best for what you need to run when the power goes out. Let me tell you about what a power station is. Now, sometimes these are called power banks or power generators, but that term is a little misleading. It's not like a gasoline generator or a propane generator that you can run perpetually as long as you have fuel. What these are is a big battery. These will run out of energy. So you either need to charge them from your wall, which is really easy to do. It comes with a wall charger. It comes with a car charger. Okay, so one of the ways that you can charge these Jackery power stations is you can plug them into your car. You just plug it right into the outlet here, and then that goes right into your input port. Or you can set it up with these solar panels to let the sun charge your battery bank. Let's use this middle one, this Jackery 1000, as an example to show you what they can do, okay? So you got a fully charged power station, the power goes out. What do you need to charge? What's most important to you? Probably a way to communicate, so let's look at that real quick. On the front of these power stations, you have several USB ports, so you can charge your phones no problem. This particular power station could probably charge your phone hundreds of times over. It's got plenty of power to do that. You could also charge a laptop. This has 3 AC ports, like 3 house plugs. You could plug in 3 things at the same time, plus all of this USB, plus you could even put in a car charger for something. You could run that all simultaneously. Now, how long you can run it depends on what you're plugging into it. If you're gonna be plugging in something that draws a lot of energy, it's gonna drain this thing really fast. So you're gonna have to choose carefully what is most important to you and what you need, and then strategize your power needs based on what you have available in this. For example, if you wanted to use this to run a blow dryer, it wouldn't work. You can't do that. If you want to run a blow dryer, something that's going to pull a lot of heat, you're going to need the Big Daddy right here because this one has enough juice. But even then, this isn't going to run it for very long. You might be able to get 30 minutes with a blow dryer. So you may consider, if the power's out, don't use a blow dryer. Let your hair air dry like I do every time. Okay?
Let's take just a minute and talk about how you know how much energy you're going to need. So one of the great ways to do this is with these little power consumption meters, and you can get these on Amazon or other places. They're fairly inexpensive, $15 to $40 if you get a fancy one. If you want to go really, really fancy, they're more, but the basics fairly inexpensive. These are going to tell you both instantaneously how many watts an appliance is using, as well as the voltage and other things. But the really important thing about these is that you can plug in an appliance like a freezer for several days or a month, and then you can understand, because that freezer is going to turn on, it's going to turn off, it's going to turn on, turn off. So this will help you understand over time, how much is that really using? When you average all that out, how much energy are you using? So this is a great way to go.
And that will also help you to know which one of these power banks is best, because you need to know how long can you run your freezer when the power goes out, so all of your midterm food storage doesn't go rotten in the freezer. So you want to know how much power it's drawing over a period of time, so you know which one of these is going to be best for you. Let me show you an easy way. If you don't want to buy one of these power meters, let me show you an easy way to get some idea of how much energy these appliances are going to be running. This isn't as applicable for like a freezer that turns on and off and on and off, but if you want to know how much something that you just turn on when you're using it and then off when you're not using it uses, let me show you how. Here I have an induction burner. This is a really cool way to cook your food when the power goes out and you don't have 220 volts of power to run your range or gas to run your range. On every appliance that you have, there's going to be a label. So you look around for the label. It's not on the back, not on the side. You turn, oh, here it is right here. Every appliance is going to have this label on it, and on this label it's going to tell you how many watts this appliance pulls. For example, this induction burner says right here it's going to use 1800 watts. That's a lot of power, which is why you may want to avoid using heat generating devices on one of these power banks. You got to be careful with that. Another example of this is, let's say you just need light when the power goes out. So you look on this light, this is just a little work light we have. There's a label on this one that says it only uses 30 watts of electricity. This could be run by either one of these for a very long time just by itself. If you hook these up to solar panels, you could run this forever and never run out of power because you're always having power brought in by your solar panels.
Now let's talk just a minute about the 3 most important numbers you're going to want to know when you look for a power station. First of all, you're going to know how much can this thing put out. How many watts can you put out? For example, this one can put out 1,000 watts. The next thing you want to know is how much storage it has. This one has 1,000 watt hours. This one has 1,500 watt hours. This one only has 167 watt hours.
167.
So there's a whole range here. The third number, and this one I actually think is the most important, number 3 is how much solar can you input to this. In this one you can put
60 watts.
60 watts of solar. This one you can put
200 input, but the maximum amount you can put in with solar panels is only 126 watts.
And with this one, you can put in 400 watts of solar. So that becomes really important when you're looking at managing your loads. How much solar you can put in is a significant and important number.
And one of the reasons why that is because if you can charge these at the same time you're pulling stuff out. But if you pull out more energy than you can put back in, this is eventually going to die. So you need to choose which one of these power stations is going to be best for your power needs based on how much you're always going to be using. For example, if you needed to run something that used 300 watts continuously 24 hours a day, you would need to pick a battery bank that could run 300 watts in from the sun all the time. So you would want this one. But in order to do that, you're going to need 4 of these panels to run 400 watts into this battery bank. If you only need to run something smaller, you can run 126 watts continuously into this battery bank with 2 of these panels. So choose your power needs carefully on what you're going to need.
When you're looking for a solar generator, you really need to decide what are your critical loads. You understand that I said critical because you're not going to be able to run everything you'd want to run. You're going to be limited to the very basic critical loads. For my wife, that's her bread mixer, her washing machine, and the freezer. So I had a target that I could shoot at.
And my wife would have totally different needs. For example, maybe you just want to be able to watch TV if the power goes out. So one of the great things about these is you can actually run a TV. You can't do that with most gas generators because the power is not clean enough. These are, and they're also quiet. You don't want to have to listen to your TV over a gasoline generator. But for every house, it's going to be different. It might be medical equipment. It might be a CPAP machine that you are worried about the power going out and you lose the ability to sleep well because of that. The last thing we want to show you about these power banks is the displays. They give you some really useful information. Let me show you this little one here. You just push this little display button on here and it shows you a few things. It tells you how much energy you have coming in, it shows you how much energy you have going out, and it tells you the overall battery percentage, how charged is this one. The 1000 has a very similar display. It shows basically the same thing as this one. You have input and output and how full is this battery, how much do you have left in there.
And this one is very similar to those. It gives you the same information, the input, the output, the battery storage. It's got a few other bells and whistles on here, but generally those are the pieces of information it's going to tell you. That's what you really need to understand.
And these displays can also be useful for you to know your power needs. For example, if you're plugging something in and you're noticing that it's plugged into solar and you have 100 watts coming in, but you're pulling out 400 watts, you know that this battery is going to die quicker than it's going to get recharged. Another one of the things you're going to want to consider is the weight of these battery banks. If you can't carry very much weight, then you might want to get a smaller one. For example, this 167 watt hour only weighs about 4 pounds. The 1000 watt hour weighs about 22 pounds. It's not hard to carry around, but you have to consider that if you're going to have to carry it a long ways, take that into account.
And the same with this one. This one's about 35 pounds. So it bumps up a little bit. This is getting a little bit awkward for some people to be able to haul. It's got great capability, but if it's too much for you to move around, and you may want to put it on a little cart or a little hand truck or something, just things you need to think about because they do go up in weight.
So now let's look at some of the most common household appliances that you might need, and let's see which one of these is going to be best suited for each one of those appliances.
This should be fun. All right, let's kick this off with a piece of medical equipment that is important for our family. This is a nebulizer. It helps a couple of our family members be able to breathe sometimes. They have a little bit of asthma trouble. So this is important to us.
And one of the things you're going to need to do is figure out how much power this thing is going to draw. So let's go back to the basics and look at the label that's on the back of the machine. It'll tell you how much power. This one says it draws 287 watts. This little machine only puts out 167. This one isn't going to be enough. But this one does 1000 and this one does 1500 watts. Either one of these is going to be just fine. So let's plug it in and give it a go here. We're just going to plug it into one of the AC power ports on the front of the machine, and then you're going to push this AC button right here to use those plugs, and then I can turn this on. And you can see that the nebulizer has now started to work. This is what the family members need. And we can look on here and see that this is pulling only 76 watts. Another reason why it's important to check how much power your machines actually use. This said it pulled 280 watts, and it's still only showing 76. So we could actually turn this off and run it on the smaller machine here. I don't think there would be any problem with this based on how much power it was just using. So I push the power button on there. Let's turn it on and see what it says. Yeah, it shows 72 watts. So this power machine, this power bank here is plenty to run a little nebulizer. But check your own machines and see how much power they use.
All right, now let's try this tool battery, since we're pretty handy guys.
We are handy fellers. We love to build.
Yeah, we love to build stuff. So let's take a look at this tool charger, the battery charger for the tools, and just see, this says it takes 110 watts. So
we could use this battery bank, since this only pulls 110 watts and this can handle 167. Now here's the catch you have to remember. If we're going to charge, and you can just do a simple size comparison, if we want to charge this battery with this power bank, these are almost the same size. I know that this one's a little bigger. We could probably only charge this battery twice with the little power bank. If we wanted to charge it more than that, you want to go a higher capacity. But if you just want to charge it once while you're out in the field, let's see how this one goes. So we're going to plug the battery in, we're going to turn the AC power on to this battery bank, and we're going to plug it in and see what happens. Well, it's running here, and it says that it is pulling out 42 watts right now. This has no trouble running it. So we could charge this battery several times, maybe 2 or 3 times with this power bank. But if you're going to be out in the field and you need to like build a house and recharge your batteries based on that, you may want to go one of these bigger power stations.
And you could have a solar panel out there with this thing, kind of building it back up again. Or
even you could have a solar panel on this, and you might be able to run this perpetually. If this only pulls 42 watts and your solar panel, this one can have 60 watts input. If the sun is shining the whole day you're working, you could run this battery charger all day long and you would not run out of power with this.
The next thing we'll look at is our Vitamix blender. And this one's going to be a little interesting. Tell us about this.
The reason why is because how much power you use for this depends on what you're blending. It doesn't use the same amount of power all the time. For example, let's just blend water in here, and it's going to get loud, but let's see how much energy comes out of this battery bank just blending water, and then we're going to put ice in here and show you the difference in energy output. Here we go. It's going to get loud. This is on the lowest setting on the blender, and it shows how many watts?
223 watts right now.
Let's turn up the speed and see how the watts changes. Let's go up halfway.
Okay, now we're at just over 500, 516, 501, so right around 500 watts.
Okay, so now let's do the same experiment, but we're going to put in something that's it's more difficult to blend. So we're going to take the lid off here, and we're going to put in ice cubes. So if you're making smoothies with these, it's going to change things. We're going to start again on the lowest setting where before it was using, what, 260 watts? And here we go, lowest setting with ice.
So we're at about 900, it's all over the place, but 700-ish watts.
And that's just from adding ice. So you can see that how you use your appliances is going to make a big difference on how much energy they use. Let's try this same experiment. I'm going to add a little more ice, but we're going to put it on the mid-level and see how many watts this thing pulls. Okay, we got ice in here. I'm going to turn it to mid-power, and we're going to see what happens. Turns out that was too much ice, and it clogged the blender, just like what happens when you go to the bathroom sometimes. So we're going to pour some more water in here and see if we can see how many watts it pulls on mid-power now. We're going to do this again. Here we go.
Okay, we're at about 1,200 watts there.
So 1,200
Bouncing
watts.
around a little bit, somewhere around 1,200 watts.
So it seems like you have to add another 500 watts. If you're going to be blending stuff that is hard to blend, you got to add another 500 or 600 watts of output to this. So choose which one's going to be best for you.
So this is where it gets a little bit interesting, because this appliance says that it uses up to 1,380 watts. We were in the 1,200 range. Now, on low levels, this one would run it. This smallest one isn't going to cut it.
Ain't going to work.
But you could use this station up to a certain level. Now these will just cut out. When you cross that 1,000 watt threshold, it's just going to turn off, which is not something you want to have happen. So if you want to use it on low level, you could use this. If you want to run it and be able to use its full functionality, this bigger station is the one you're going to need.
Yep.
Now we're going to talk just a little bit about this crock pot. Now this is a great place to say, just because you can run something doesn't mean that you necessarily should.
Let me talk about why that is. On low, this crock pot uses 175 watts. This little power bank is 176 watt hours, which means you can use 176 watts for 1 hour. So we could plug this crock pot into the teeny Jackery power station, but it would only run it for an hour, and your food's not going to be cooked in an hour on low. So you're going to want to choose a battery bank that can run your crock pot for a lot longer. Right now we have the crock pot is on low right now, and it says 173 watts. That means we could run this crock pot for 12 or more hours on the big power station, or 1 hour on the small power station.
Now, as we said, maybe there's a better way to get this job done. Maybe you shouldn't be using, and typically that's what we recommend, is not using air conditioning or heating or cooking, because they just draw so much energy. Is it really worth the energy? Or should you find something like maybe a sun oven or some other way, alternative way, that you can get that done and save this energy for other things that you might need more?
And one of the things you might consider is maybe instead of using this to cook your food, if the power's out, maybe you have to build a fire. Cook your food over a fire, and you save all your energy for your critical needs. Let's look at lighting now, specifically area lighting. When the power goes out, you don't want to be in the dark. You want to be able to see what you're doing, and that might be a safety issue as well. So here's a little area light. Now, this may not be the best option to run on a power bank. You might want to save your power for more pressing needs. So if you have access to a solar lantern, like this one, you might choose to do that, because the sun will recharge this during the day, and then you can use it during the nighttime. But let's say you do need the area lighting. On the label here, it says this only pulls 30 watts, so we can plug this into any one of these power stations, and it will run it for a decent amount of time. Let's start with the little power bank here. We'll plug it in, and then let's look at how much light one of these can put out. So let's see here. How's this? Oh my goodness, that thing's bright. You could light up a house with this. You could run it for quite a while. It only pulls 30 watts. You could run it almost forever on this. And if you have solar going in, you could run lights indefinitely.
So this is another really important thing for our family, because in the summer when it's hot, just the ability to move air is really significant. It makes a huge difference in our comfort level and even in our safety.
And you want to be able to feel that wind through your hair for some of us who haven't lost it already. Well, one of the interesting things when we plugged this in, we found something unexpected. Yeah. This fan runs more efficiently on high than low. The label says that it's going to draw about 120 amps, but let's see what happens. We'll start this on low and we'll watch the power readout and see how many watts it's pulling out of this power bank. So here's low. And it says it's pulling 55 watts on low. Let's go up to medium. Now it says it's pulling 57 watts, only 2 watts difference for low to medium. Let's go to high. And now it's pulling 55 watts. So it uses less power on high than it does on medium. This is another reason why it's important to check how much energy your appliances actually use. For example, the fan is more efficient apparently on high than it is on low, and it moves more air that way.
This is another example of something that we would like to use, but maybe shouldn't use. This is an induction plate. These are very, very efficient. But they still use a lot of energy. On high, this is around 1,570 watts. On low, it's about 1,000. So on low, you could use it with this station, but anything more than low, you need to use this station. But again, should you really use that? Is that precious energy being used in the best way, or would you find an alternative way to boil that water?
And maybe a good solution is to keep a propane-powered stove in your food storage area. That way you can use the propane for the stuff that's going to require a lot of heat and not use your electricity for stuff that you don't need it for.
Another item on my wife's wish list or demand list, however you want to look at this, is her washing machine. And so this morning we did a batch of laundry using this power station, and it did a great job. We have a very efficient washing machine, and it used about 120 watt hours of energy, which I would consider to be a good use of energy when you consider what it would take to wash those clothes by hand, and with the soap and the rinsing, a pain. The washing machine does a great job. Now, throwing them in the dryer took more than 300 watt hours of energy. I would opt instead to hang them on the line outside.
And that's a gas dryer.
That is a gas dryer.
You couldn't run an electric dryer with one of these. They draw way too much energy. So this is just talking about how much energy does it take to tumble the clothes around and dry them. This is probably not the best use of energy for that. Hang them on the line outside if the power's out and save this energy for something more critical.
Absolutely. The last appliance we're going to talk about today is our freezer. Now this is, to me, a truly important appliance. And tell us a little bit about your perspective on this.
Here's my perspective. If the power goes out, even if it's for 3 days, how are you going to keep all the food and the stuff in your freezer cold? Otherwise it goes bad. This food in the freezer and your refrigerator are great midterm food storage items. And if you lose it all just because the power goes out for 3 or 4 days, that's a terrible waste. This is where I really wanted to have this, so that I could back up my food in the freezer and have it stay good. Now I did a little experiment, unintentional experiment. I accidentally unplugged my chest freezer at home in my basement, and I had it unplugged for 3 days. And I went after 3 days and opened it up, and the food was still frozen, totally fine. But if I had left it any longer than that, the food would have started to go bad. So that let me know that I have some buffer window of safety once the power goes out, but I'm gonna need something to maintain that food. And that's where this might be a really handy way to preserve that food. They're not loud, they don't make any noise, and they're really small, easy to charge. You can even run solar into these while you are running your freezer, and you could run your freezer for a very long time. At the very least, even with the smaller one, it buys you time till the power comes back on.
So there you have it. This is our summary. This has been fun, and you've had a chance to look at 3 different power stations. Hopefully this gives you a better perspective on what they are and how they work. And I want to thank Mike for spending some time with us today. This has been fun, and I think we'll be doing more of these in the future. And I want to thank Jackery for providing the opportunity to do this review. And they are offering a 10% discount if you use the promo code Provident. That will get you these stations for a discount. Now that doesn't include the accessories, but this is a great offer from them, and we appreciate that.
And I want to just talk about Jackery for a minute and my experience with them. I've had this power station for 2 years. I've used it many times, and I have nothing but good to say about it. If you look at their reviews online, other people feel the same way. All of these power stations are going to fit your needs, and they're going to keep you going in an emergency so that you can power your critical needs and not end up in trouble.
And now for the question of the day. What size power station do you think you need to run your critical loads? Comment below. And thanks for being part of the solution.